Welcome to the Office of the State Auditor's 2025 State Compliance Audit Guide update. In this video, I will go through some of our website changes that our office has undergone, as well as the updates that have been made to each chapter of the State Compliance Audit Guide, or SCAG. Note that this video is for informational purposes only, and nothing in it should be taken as legal advice. First off, our main website, auditor.utah.gov, has a new look. We also have a new Local Government Resource Center with a new URL. To access it, click on the Local Government tab from our homepage. That will open up this page. To find the updated version of the SCAG and other materials available from our office, click on Forms, Manuals, and Guides, shown circled in red. The updated SCAG can be found under the State Compliance Audit Guide drop-down menu. Click the first link to access a PDF detailing the changes made to the SCAG, and click the second link to access the full 2025 State Compliance Audit Guide. Working files can be found below. The working files for the 2024 version of the SCAG can also be found underneath the 2025 working files. Other materials, including the most recent auditor alerts, can be found under the other various drop-down menus. Now that you know where to find the updated manuals, we'll go over the updates that were made to Chapter 1 of the SCAG. The first change in Chapter 1 of the SCAG is in Section E, Restricted Taxes and Other Related Restricted Revenue. During the 2025 state legislative session, HB 456 and SB 261 passed and modified provisions of Utah Code Section 17-31-5.5. This code section governs the report that counties are required to submit detailing their transient room tax, or TRT, expenditures, and their tourism, recreation, cultural, convention, and airport facilities tax, or TRCCA, expenditures. As of July 1, 2025, counties are required to include a breakdown of these expenditures in their annual financial report. As a result of these changes, a new requirement has been added to Chapter 1 of the SCAG to verify balances shown on the TRT or TRCCA activity report against a county's financial statements and supporting documentation. To ensure that entities are using the fraud risk assessment as a tool to assess their risk level and take steps to reduce their fraud risk, a new requirement has been added to Chapter 1, Section F of the SCAG to verify the supporting documentation for the entity's fraud risk assessment responses. For example, if the entity claims to have a purchasing policy, have them produce it. If an entity claims to have an internal audit function, there should be evidence such as an audit plan, audit reports, meeting agendas, or meeting minutes. Now we'll move on to updates that were made in Chapter 2 of the SCAG. There was only one update made to Chapter 2 of the SCAG. The changes found in Section G, Public Treasurer's Bond. HB 64, Public Official Bonding Amendments, modified state code so that for any public official or employee that was previously required to be bonded or have crime insurance is now the only option allowed by statute. Fidelity bonds can no longer be used in place of crime insurance. The SCAG has been updated to reflect this change. Now we'll cover the updates to Chapter 3 of the SCAG, Audit Procedures for Local Education Agencies. All updates to Chapter 3 of the SCAG can be found in Section B, Public Education Program, Financial and Program Compliance. In Chapter 3, Section B, under the Minimum School Program subsection, a requirement was added to review expenditures coded to Program 5344 Students at Risk add-on, and determine if the expenditures have supporting documentation showing that the expenditures were intended to meet the requirements of Utah Code 53F-2-314, subsection 3, that the money improve the academic achievement of students who are at risk as defined by statute. Note that you do not need to prove that these program expenditures improved the academic achievement of at-risk students, just that the entity has supporting documentation that the expenditures were intended to improve the academic achievement of at-risk students. The next update is a requirement added to Chapter 3, Section B, under the Procurement subsection. To select a sample of agreements the LEA has with education service providers and/or education technology applications and determine that the agreements include the required provisions found in Utah Code 53E-9-309. This section of code is focused on protecting student data. We'll go over a summary of the key requirements that Utah Code Section 53E-9-309 places on vendors regarding student privacy and data protection. I will also discuss practical examples of what to look for and how to evaluate it. Vendors can only use student data to provide contracted services. This is a basic requirement that should be included in every contract, limiting the use of data to the services provided. One key point to highlight is the need to be aware of vague terms, such as educational services or for administrative purposes. Specificity is essential. It's the only way to effectively evaluate whether the use of data is properly limited in the contract. Transparency around data sharing aims to identify contractors, subcontractors, or other entities and individuals with whom the data is shared. What are their roles, and what is the legal basis and necessity for the sharing? Each data share should have a clearly defined purpose, and the vendor should keep a log that is routinely updated and easily auditable. Check for last update of the log to ensure the data on it is not obsolete. Vendors must delete or return data timely. If a data deletion request is a trigger condition for data deletion in the contract, verify whether the educational entity has a process in place to monitor contract terminations and to automate data deletion requests. If there is an audit clause in the contract, it should not be limited to virtual audits, third-party audits, or audits triggered only by narrowly defined conditions. Audit triggers should be defined by the client, not the vendor. It should also include the right to review past audit reports and conduct audits related to the incidents or breaches. Except in cases of mergers, the sale of student data should not occur under any conditions. Targeted advertising is also prohibited. Ensure that the contracts include provisions to prohibit these activities. Vendors may use student data to personalize learning, improve their tools, or suggest further learning opportunities. But targeted advertising using student data cannot result from these uses. If vendors wish to communicate with students about further educational opportunities, this must be based on proper consent. Review the consent management practices in play, including the clarity of the terminology used and the ease of accessing and withdrawing consent. Merger-related documentation must include clauses that impose the same or more stringent requirements on the buyer or the newly formed entity and reference the same applicable laws. General exceptions to these rules exist. These rules do not apply to general websites, internet providers, directory information, or platforms not controlled by the vendor. Some protections can be waived. A third-party contractor or the education entity may obtain written authorization from a student's parent if the student is not an adult, or from the student if the student is an adult, to waive any data privacy provisions of this code section. Now on to changes to Chapter 4 of the SCAG. Language has been updated throughout Chapter 4 to meet current standards. Please ensure to review the language changes in Chapter 4. If you have any questions about any of the updates that were made to the 2025 State Compliance Audit Guide, please contact Seth Oveson or Parker Van Erden with our office.